Could you talk about how you came upon this property and transformed it into these larger features and what that process was?
It began in the late 1950s in Belgium, created by Peyo. And Peyo started with one book. They came out of a story with this character, Johan, and they were little teeny characters within that story. And then they got the most write-ins to Peyo, and then Peyo created his first introduction to Smurf Village with that, and then many books after that followed. One of which was called The Smurfette, or The Strumpfette, and that's what this movie was based on, the second movie on Smurfette's story in that. Those books were hugely successful in Romance language countries predominantly. So throughout Europe and Latin America, they were extremely successful. In late 1979, early 1980, I was an executive at ABC, a little young executive at ABC, and another young friend of mine named Brandon Tartikoff was the very young president of NBC at that point. And we were in Hawaii together, and he said, "No one at my network loves 8 o'clock or Saturday morning programming. You love it. So I want you to read 3 books from me and tell me whether you think they should be at 8 o'clock or whether they should be Saturday morning." And when the president of the opposing network asks you to, as a friend, to read something, you read it that night and you get back to him in the morning, which even on vacation I did. And we had an interesting conversation that followed, which was, do you see it written exactly as Peyo has written it? Or can you add more subversive adult humor so it operates on 2 levels? And he said, I really love them the way they are, and I want to do them that way. And I said, then they really belong on Saturday morning, not at 8 o'clock. And about a year later, he sent me a note and said, in about a month, tune in. And it was Hanna-Barbera's cartoon, starting in 1981, that I think to this day is, including cartoons like SpongeBob and others, is still the largest, the most viewed cartoon in history. The truth of the matter is, Raj and I would always ask each other, what would Peyo think? Okay, so we tried to, for the fans of the books, the fans of the animation, we worked very hard to stay true to his writing in that. And sometimes the dialogue would come directly out of an episode. Sometimes I was always on the phone at least once a week with his daughter, once in a while with his son. The daughter runs the business. The son is Thierry, and Veronique. Thierry draws the comic books. And they would read every set of new pages, and we would talk about them. We'd shape them with the writers. So there was a constant involvement from Belgium with what our movie finally ended up to be. And we worked very, very hard with everyone in Paris and the Film Commission, everywhere else, to get these done properly. But we got a Steadicam approved by the church and by the government, that the government controls the facade of Notre Dame and the church controls the sanctuary. We were never in the sanctuary, we were only on the facade. But both approved. Because the Smurfs are loved in France. So we were able to do something no one else had ever done, which is to take a Steadicam, a French Steadicam operator, and run him through, and we were all up on that roof, run him through the flying buttresses. The same thing was true with the Palais Garnier, which is, the opera house, and no one had ever been able to shoot on its stage talking to everyone in the audience. And they had some second unit work that they did for Sherlock Holmes, the second Sherlock Holmes. But no one's ever, and Phantom of the Opera had a little bit of second unit work, plates and things. But we shot there 3 days, actually 2 nights and a day. And we were able to shoot all the audience reactions and Gargamel on stage. And everything shooting this way was actually shot in Montreal. Everything shooting that way was shot in Paris. The family arena has always been sort of a stepchild. It's always been seen as something, well, they make that for kids. But I think certainly over the last 10 years, and Jeffrey Katzenberg was a huge leader in this, with his films at Disney and later with Shrek and others, these films now operate on 2 levels. One entire level for adults, one entire level for younger people in that. Our first movie, the first Smurfs, 1/3 of the audience was children. 1/3, okay? 1/3 were their parents. And 1/3 were those who grew up on the Smurfs, watching the cartoon or internationally reading the books. And so it was a nostalgia factor as well. And we realized that the movie that we had made then was a movie that catered to that catered to those two levels. So I think there's been a groundswell. The accolades, other than there are the Critics Awards and all of those that actually have family categories. Hopefully someday the Academy will and the Foreign Press Association will. But around the world, these are the films that stay on shelves in video stores longer than any other titles. But more importantly, they stay on the shelves of families. And they're seen over and over and over and over again. And I had a really interesting experience. A year ago, I moved back to Los Angeles from North Carolina, where I was the dean of the film school at University of North Carolina. Right. And all of my students there, now these are students, of course, a lot of face hair, and they're all wearing black. Not that I'm wearing a lot of black too, I guess, but they're all wearing black, and they were all too cool for the room. But one by one, 275 of them, made their way up to my office to say, my whole love of film, my sense of values as a human being were all based on the Mighty Ducks. And I would hear stories about the Mighty Ducks movies from them. And in a funny way, that confirmed for me that the life that I chose to seek out these movies, in addition to dramas, adult dramas, but to seek out these family movies and to put into them stories of blended families, issues that teenagers face, to put those in, that those little seeds that get planted in a movie of someone who's 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 will later, 10 years later, 15, 20 years later, pay off in the kind of citizen and the kind of filmmakers that we have. And so for me, it was a hugely unexpected benefit by being a dean.